Good morning or good afternoon, I guess, depending on where you're at in the country. We're here for the very first broadcast of Cybersecurity Insiders. I'm here with my co-host, Carleen Langford, the better half in this duo. And we're all very, very happy that you're here today. And we think that ongoing this webinar series of webinars monthly are going to be really great for your business because we're going to really talk to you about how you can protect your business from this advancing and exponentially growing cybercrime world that we're all living within right now. So with that, I wanted to go through some ground rules with you. You're all muted here on the Crowdcast platform, but on the right, you will see two boxes, one for chat and one for Q&A. Use the chat if you just have general comments that you want to leave. If you have a specific question, use the icon with the question mark. Those are Q&As. Because what will happen is as we answer those questions, we'll be able to tag it in the video and report back later of where we answered your question. You'll be able to go right to it in the broadcast. So pretty cool technology. But this is all brand new technology as we were struggling for the last half hour trying to get this up and running and actually working appropriately. But I think we're good now. I think we're good. So let's go ahead and get started. So I'm going to invite Art Gross to the stage. Let me grab him and bring him to the main stage. Art, thanks for joining today.
Thanks, Sarah. Thanks, Carleen. And as you said, we were struggling in the green room trying to get this to work. So hopefully we won't have any technical issues. Got to love technology.
Absolutely. So Art is with a company called Inskyber, which is a cyber insurance company. I've known Art for probably 3 or 4 years now. He's an unbelievable expert in cybersecurity, but more importantly, he's a good friend. And to have him come on and be the first guest on our show is really great. He thinks he's a guinea pig because we're testing new technology, which I guess, yeah, true. You are a guinea pig, and that's cool. But with that,
I've been called worse. So that's okay.
That's right. That's right. Well, let's go ahead and get started. So, Art, I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about your background and a little bit about Inskyber. Let's set the stage there.
I am a managed service provider. I'm a CEO of a managed service provider. So I'm very, very much into technology, supporting small and mid-sized businesses, focusing on healthcare. I'm also a CEO of Breach Secure Now, which is a cyber awareness training company. And I am CEO of Inskyber, which is an insurance broker. Focusing on cyber insurance and cyber security. So needless to say, I don't sleep that much. A lot of things going on, all involving cyber security, technology, and protecting clients from criminals and keeping networks running. So a lot going on there.
There is a lot going on there. Tell us a little bit about Inskyber. What was the concept behind it? How did it come about?
Yeah, so as we, I mentioned that I am the CEO of Breach Secure Now. It's a cyber security company, and we work with tens of thousands of small and mid-sized businesses, managed service providers, and I saw the struggle that a lot of companies were having with obtaining insurance, making sure that they had the right controls, the right safeguards in place. And through working with MSPs and small businesses, we saw that opportunity. So, we've been running Inskyber for about 2 years now, and it's growing rapidly. And there's a whole lot of change in the cyber insurance world, as we're going to talk about it today. So, we were a little early, and now it's crazy times.
Awesome. Well, Carleen, I think you might have a question or two. What do you have for Art?
I do. I think that I want to, for the listening audience out there, how do you make cybersecurity more real than just that buzzword? Tell us what you're seeing in the world of cybersecurity, the trends, and what's going on these days.
Cybersecurity is interesting. The trends. You hear about ransomware all the time. You hear about cyber criminals, but if you looked at what happened during COVID in 2020, the cyber crime has just gone exponential now. And I don't see it slowing down, especially if there's, some economic, hardships in this year or next year recession. Criminals just love insecurity, disinformation. And, so we're seeing just a rise in cybercrime. And, I mentioned ransomware, but the biggest concern that I see is more about financial crime and trying to business email compromise and, trying to trick people to wiring money or paying fake invoices. So, ransomware gets all of the attention, but it's really this financial crime and social engineering is just, it's a real problem for small businesses, large businesses. It goes up, into the enterprise. So no business is immune to it. And I don't see any signs of cybercrime slowing down. If not, it's accelerating. I mean, it's over $1 trillion industry right now. Think about that. It's bigger than Amazon. It's bigger than Apple. That's how big this is. And then when you have that much resources, you're going to get a whole lot of people wanting a piece of that pie.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Art, we've talked a lot over the years, but what would you consider to be the top three like non-negotiable things that businesses have to have in place to ensure that that they're covered from a cybersecurity perspective? I mean, there's a laundry list, and I know we're going to get to that here soon. But what do you think are the top three?
Well, I'm kind of special towards training employees. The biggest risk that businesses have are a mistake by one of their employees. If we didn't have a human problem, we probably wouldn't have a cybersecurity problem, right? And people are tricked in social engineering. They make mistakes. They're sending information to the wrong customers, the wrong patients, and so you got to focus on strengthening employees. That's number one. Two, I would look at multi-factor authentication, right? Everyone's reusing passwords and there's tons of passwords on the dark web. If you don't have multi-factor authentication, just waiting to be hacked. And then we were talking about ransomware. You have to have a solid backup and recovery plan. It's not just backing up the data. You got to make sure that you can actually recover. That's the best way to survive a ransomware attack. So if you ask for only three, those are the top three that I would pick. But as you were mentioning, there's probably another 15. But from a top three, those are where I would definitely focus. And they're low-hanging fruit, right? Training employees isn't that hard. Implementing MFA or multi-factor authentication isn't that hard. And making sure that you have good backups and cloud-based backups and ability to restore isn't that hard anymore. So those where my focus would be.
Great. Yeah, I totally see it. And by the way, everybody, as a company, Telesystem, we offer many types of cybersecurity services, including security awareness training, which is, I think, the first thing that we talked about here. But Carlene, what do you have?
Well, I was going to say that, Ira, you said I don't know, I saw one of your presentations where you basically said it's not if, it'll be when you'll be hit with a cyber attack. So I think that companies are probably interested in figuring out about the insurance and getting the insurance. So what are the types of things that are on the checklist if a company needed to sign up for insurance, Art?
Yeah, and go figure. Some of the top elements are the three that I've already mentioned. Training employees and backing up data. I call it the big five, right? So one, you have to have training. Two, you have to have a solid antivirus and endpoint detection and response. You need to know what's happening on those desktops and systems. Multi-factor authentication. You have to have data backup and recovery. And then also one of the biggest attack vectors is remote access, leaving systems open for either remoting into it or supporting it or to get to data. Having a solid remote desktop strategy and protecting that is really important. And those I call those the top five. Most insurance companies, if you don't have those in place, you're going to be very hard pressed to get insurance, or if you do get insurance, it's going to be very expensive. So those are kind of the non-negotiables. For the most part, all carriers want to see those five. A bunch of other pieces that will help secure, but those are the top five that the major carriers are looking for.
So Art, one of the things that has been one of my favorite things over the years is this concept of security awareness training. Taking the weakest link in your business and making it the strongest defense. And it's interesting, over the 3.5, 4 years we've been selling this, what I found has not changed over the years. And it's crazy to me that most businesses don't think of this piece. Like I would say 80 to 85% of the customers we talk to have never thought about that human element. So what role do you see security awareness training taking in protecting business from the bad guys?
I mean, it's a huge role. As I mentioned, the majority of breaches are caused by employee mistakes. They don't want to make mistakes. They're either socially engineered, they're tricked, phishing, social media. They lose a laptop. They send PII, personal identifiable information, via email. And so if you ignore the number one factor of employees making mistakes, as I mentioned before, without a human problem, an employee problem, you wouldn't have a cybersecurity problem. By strengthening employees, you can lower the chance of breaches. But you got it right, Ira. People want technology, right? They want to put a firewall. They want to put some antivirus on a machine and say, we're done, right? Can't we just be done? And unfortunately, that's not the way it works. And if the majority of the breaches are caused by employee mistakes, you have to focus on them. Yes, you need the other pieces. You need data backup and MFA and password managers and endpoint detection and response and antivirus. But you need to strengthen those employees to help protect themselves and your company. And it is just it's kind of interesting. What you mentioned is like, why don't companies think of this? Because they expect, we hire good employees, they're smart people, they're not going to make a mistake, and if we have technology, we don't have to worry about it. We can focus on our business. But that's unfortunately not the case. You really do have to focus on employees, and it's a low-hanging fruit. If it isn't that expensive to train employees, it doesn't take that much time, and if you can build a culture of security, you will strengthen your cybersecurity exponentially, and then you put the other pieces of technology. So I think it's the most important aspect, along with technology, to go to give you more of layers, but skipping on focusing on the employees are going to really be a problem.
Yeah, I agree. And we built this whole sort of cybersecurity division of our company. We started with security awareness training. It was the bread and butter at the beginning because we felt like it could give the most impact. And just so everyone knows, Art's company is actually he's like the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain. Their product is what we actually sell as our security awareness training. It's the best around by far, and we vetted out everybody. So if you're not thinking as a business owner, or maybe you're a partner on this call, you're not thinking about, or you haven't thought about security awareness training, that needs to be on your agenda this year, and the sooner the better.
And just to go a little further in this, people think of training. Historically, we used to have like annual training, right? You would train employees once a year, and don't here's HIPAA training, or here's cyber security training. That's not the way humans learn. Humans learn by continuous training and by testing and all of those pieces. So we have to think of cybersecurity training as same as teaching a student math or physics or economics. Ongoing training and testing and really strengthening those employees. So yeah, training is probably one of the most, most needed aspect. And it's one of the things that cyber insurance carriers are absolutely looking at. They realize it. They know it. They know employees are the biggest mistake, or the weakest link, so to speak. I don't really like to call employees the weakest link, but without training, they are. And carriers realize that, and they are requiring, security awareness training, simulated phishing, proof that you are strengthening these employees.
Excellent.
So, I mean, that's basically that's a perfect segue into my next question about the whole cybersecurity insurance world. What's going on out there? Like, who are the vendors? What are the kinds of things they're doing?
Yeah. Well, let's put it this way. It is an industry in transition, right? So, a few years ago, not maybe 5 years ago, anyone could get insurance. It was really cheap. It was, you were asked 4 or 5 questions. You have a firewall, you're backing up data, you have antivirus, and we'll give you, cyber insurance. And it was relatively inexpensive, starting under $1,000. Things changed, as I mentioned, in COVID and all of these scams and all of this ransomware attacks and data breaches. And what the carriers woke up to one day is, oh my God, we got to pay out a lot of claims, right? Because all of these cheap policies, these businesses were starting to, become cyber crime victims. And so the carriers then said, we gotta stop this, right? We're going to go out of business. I mean, an insurance carrier is in business to make money, right? You collect premiums and you pay out less than what you collect and you make money. When you start to pay out more than what you collect, you have a big problem. So, they did 2 things that, significantly impact businesses. The first one was they raised premiums. Okay. So, no longer is it $1,000, it's 100% more, 2,000, 4,000, 5,000. So if your policy was 10,000, you could be looking at 20,000. If it was 20,000, you'd be looking at 40,000 or 20,000, 40,000. So the other piece was, to go along with that is the coverage has been reduced. So if they were covering $1 million of ransomware, not only did your premium potentially double, but they may only cover $500,000 of ransomware. So now you have sublimits. That's what it's called, sublimits. Like you may have $1 million policy, but it only covers $500,000 of ransomware. It only covers $250,000 of business email compromise or financial fraud. So policies went down in coverage in the amount what they were covering, while premiums went up. The second big piece of that was that the carriers realized all of these companies that were applying for insurance, they were checking a box that they implemented a few pieces of technology and they were getting insurance. Well, they realized that that's not the way to lower the risk of cybercrime. So those 4 questionnaires of what kind of cybersecurity safeguards became 60 questions. So it's not only 4 things you need 60. And if you don't have 60 or all 60, then you're going to pay the highest premium. So because the carriers realized that the only way to minimize our losses is by lowering the chance of a data breach and ransomware. And the way to lower that is to implement more cybersecurity. So the combination of both is, you have to show the carrier that you have a lot more cybersecurity implemented, that you're really taking that seriously. And on the other hand is you're going to pay more money than you did in the past, and you're probably going to have less coverage than you had in the past. And, if you're a business, that's not really good. Although it is transforming the industry to implement more cybersecurity. Forget about government controls and all of that. Cyber insurance is driving cybersecurity adoption, which, from a security awareness point of view or security, company, we like that. We want more businesses to implement cybersecurity and to lower the chances of breaches. So long-winded answer, but that is really the what's happened in the last couple of years in cyber insurance.
No, it makes sense, right? And you know, I think the thing to think about here for everybody who's listening, either now we're streaming this to LinkedIn, by the way, we're streaming this to YouTube, wherever you're at, is this is like a giant game of whack-a-mole. You know, if you've ever been to the old carnivals, the traveling carnivals, they have this game where you have this big mallet thing and these moles there's like 8 or 10 holes and they keep popping out and you keep knocking them back in the hole, and it's maddening because it never ends and you never end up winning. But that's what like cybersecurity is about. You know, what Art's getting to here is, listen, there's this laundry list of things you need to be doing as a business. If you want to get insurance, right, you have to be doing all these things. But, you know, even if you want to be protecting your business, you got to be doing the majority of them. And the thing is, it's like boom, boom, you're knocking one down. It's a constant iterative process. So you need to understand that. And Art, you know, I know over the last couple of years, the cyber insurance world has changed dramatically, right? And you've went into some of those things already. But, you know, one of the things I've been hearing, and I don't know how much truth there is to this, because if you think about it, the insurance world, whether it's health insurance or cyber insurance or business insurance, is all about you need to be profitable as a company. So you want to limit your exposure and pay out as little as you can, right? You know, that's the game here. And, you know, I've heard that there's this trend out in the cyber insurance world where, let's say I go through and I sign up for insurance and I answer the 60 questions and, you know, I answer some of them not false, right? I say I'm doing something, but I'm really not. Like I say I have my people sign off on security policies, but I'm really not. Or I say I have MFA and I really don't. And let's say I did that and I were to get breached at a later point. As an insurer, you probably don't know. You're taking my word for it that I did these things. But if I didn't and I get breached, what happens then? I imagine you can come back to me and say, no, we're not paying out.
That's exactly what happens. So, you know, anytime you have a claim, you have some cyber crime, ransomware, you know, financial fraud, data breach, whatever that is, you know, you submit that claim to the insurance company, they are going to send forensics investigators, right? We're going to figure out what happened. One, because you have to do that. We have to figure out what happened because we may need to notify customers. There's a whole bunch of pieces to go along with that. But as part of that forensic investigation, we find out, you said you had MFA on all of your systems, and we find out it's only on a subset. And the systems that didn't have MFA, and that's because of the breach, then you weren't really being honest on your application. And what we've seen, Travelers is a great case. You know, they went to court and said, we're not going to pay out on this claim. And they won. And it was a manufacturer. They got hit with a ransomware attack. They said they had MFA on all of their systems. It turned out they only had it on desktops and not their servers. And sure enough, you know, one of the servers were compromised. And Travelers said, nope, you were not truthful on that. And think about it. From an insurance point of view, that makes sense. You know, we're insuring you. We're going to pay claims, but you need to lower the risk to yourself and to us. And if you say you're doing something and not doing it, why should we have to pay out? And of course, you know, it went to court and Travelers won. So, you know, that has a huge impact. And Ira, you're right. This is happening. Has a huge impact because if you look at the cyber controls you're putting in place, you know, are you really doing what you say you're doing? And you may not lie. You know, you may think you have MFA on everything, but it's only a subset. You may think you're training your employees, but they're not actually taking the training. Does that count? You know, just because you pay for training and no one's going through the training, does that count? Just because you say you have antivirus, but your definitions are not up to date, does that count? So the false sense of security, oh, we have this insurance policy, it doesn't really give you security until you actually put a claim in and the insurance company pays on it. And, you know, a lot of times people want to say, well, insurance companies, they're not they're not going to pay and they're evil. They're not evil. We will pay out on claims, and they do pay out on claims, but they're expecting in return that if you said you were implementing cybersecurity controls to lower the chance of a breach, you're actually doing that. So, it could make people very uncomfortable because, everyone likes to say, well, at least I have my safety net. I have this insurance policy. But if you don't know if you're going to get paid out on that, that could be a major problem. And, I don't want people to stay up at night thinking about this, but they should be validating the things that we said we were doing, we're truly doing. And I think that opens up, a big gap in what potentially could happen to a company. And the thing is, and one of the pieces with like renewals, just because you have a policy on renewal, there may be a lot more cybersecurity controls that you're going to have to put into place. So, one of the things I definitely recommend is, as part of the renewal process, should start as early as possible. It used to be, we'll wait until the last 2 weeks, get the best price and sign up. But you may get hit with 10 new controls that you need to put in place. You can't put an MFA across everything in 2 weeks. You can't put an EDR system in and implement it, across a company in 2 weeks. You may need 2 months or 3 months. So starting the process earlier is highly recommended now.
Makes sense. Go ahead, Carlene.
I'm just wondering, are you seeing the insurance companies requiring you to prove some of this stuff? So if you say you've put these controls in place, you
what's interesting, that's a great question. What's interesting is, when you fill out the application, they really don't. They are, you were attesting to the fact that what you're saying is true. And, you're signing that. And it's really until there's an investigation. And then it's the burden is, let's prove that what you said you had in place, you truly have in place. So there isn't like, okay, here's my training report. All my employees got trained. Here's, the proof that I have MFA across everything. I can see it going there. I mean, I can definitely see in the next year or two, that's where the carriers will go. But right now it's more of a self-attestation with the caveat that just because you have insurance and just because you say you're doing it doesn't mean you're going to get paid unless you can prove that you're doing it. So one of the things to go along with that is, I would recommend businesses, when they're working with their IT, you can't get cyber insurance without working with your IT staff, whether that's in-house or whether that's a managed service provider, to make sure that you do have the proof. If every one of those questions that you're answering, that you have a report to show that this is the case. And if I'm a business owner, I would be pushing back on IT to say, are you sure we're doing this? Are we training employees? Are you sure that everyone is taking that training? Are you sure that we have multi-factor authentication across all the systems that we are saying that we have? So, a lot of times, it's easy to say, oh, let's just answer yes, and I think we'll be okay. I would, as a business owner, be pushing back and really, asking for proof, even if we may not have to submit it to the insurance company, but proof that what we're saying, we can actually back up.
I want to, the comments and questions are starting to come in. So I'm going to try something here. So basically, this is Seth just sent this. No, I'm sorry. This is not the right one. Hold on a minute. So Seth just put this in. It says 69% of survey respondents would avoid a company that had suffered a data breach, and 29% of those surveyed would never visit that business again. Perhaps it's no surprise that most of these businesses go out of business within 6 months. Amazing. Yeah. Amazing. We do have a question here, Art. I want to send this to you real quick, and then I'll turn it back to Carlene. But they said, Art, how important is alignment to a recognized cyber framework in order to collect on claims? Maybe you can talk about what a cyber framework is first, because maybe some people don't know what that is. Yeah.
So, it's a great question. And it's really, that's, part of some of the changes that insurance companies are looking for. Cyber frameworks are like NIST, which is National Institute of Security Technology. I don't actually know what NIST stands for, but NIST is like one of the frameworks that advise, this is the pieces of technology, pieces of process, things that you do that will lower the chance of, how to protect data. So I think NIST is one of them. CIS is another framework. These are things that companies can, implement or those frameworks. And they really help companies, because otherwise you're like, well, what should I implement and what should I be looking at? So by taking frameworks, it helps with the implementation. Now, what we're seeing on a lot of the applications are, insurers are saying, are you aligning your security program with a framework? What is the framework? Is it ISO? Is it CIS? Is it NIST? And it is really important now. And because I think, again, the carriers are saying the way to protect a business is to make sure that they're aligning with a framework. And, now, one of the things to point out is you don't have to say yes to everything. There are some things that you won't get insurance for if you say we don't have multi-factor authentication and our remote access is open to the internet with no protections other than a user ID and password. Most likely you won't get insurance. If you say we are implementing some framework, but we don't have it totally implemented, most likely you'll still get insurance. Some of it may be higher premiums, but we are seeing the carriers look more and more at these frameworks, and they realize a company, one of the really key points here is, can you tell a good story? Can you show the carrier that we totally, feel that cyber security is important, that we're doing what we can, to our resources, meaning financial resources or personnel resources, to lower the chance of a data breach, to protect ourselves. And if you can paint that story, if you can say we've implemented a NIST framework or a CIS framework or an ISO framework, and paint that picture, that carrier is going to have a much higher comfort level that you are truly implementing the controls needed, as opposed to some company that doesn't really care about security and they just want this policy, and there's a good chance that the carrier is going to have to pay out. So I think these frameworks are important, and I think they help tell a good story. And that is the key for business working with an insurance company, being able to tell a good cybersecurity story.
Awesome. And I'm going to turn it back to Carlene here in a second, but I just want to remind everyone some cool stuff in the technology here. Down below the video, there's a button. That's a live button that allows you to download a cyber insurance tip worksheet we did for you. So if you want to download that at any time, just click on that button. On the Q&A, you all have the ability to determine what questions we answer. So as people answer questions, you can upvote them in the Q&A, and the ones that bubble up to the top are the ones more people want to hear about. So make sure that you upvote those things. So Carlene, I'll turn it back to you.
He turns it back to me after distracting me with all the cool technology. That doesn't make sense. So talking about, our customers that are out there and they don't have insurance, what happens when they get breached? What kind of impact financially are they expected to feel?
That is a great question. And one of the big problems is most business owners have no idea what a data breach really is. And we look at it financially. Oh, the breach will cost you, X amount. And I think we're going to talk about that a little bit more in detail, but it's really the emotional impact, right? The knowing that, oh my God, I've worked so hard. Think of a small business owner or mid-sized business owner, worked so hard to build this business, and it all can go away. I mean, I get hit with, $5 million of expenses. I won't be able to pay for it. I have such a great reputation because I make a great product, and now my reputation is destroyed. I got competitors using this breach to steal my customers. I have customers reading about a data breach and avoiding doing business with it. It's devastating. You're also making decisions in the dark. Okay, no one's practiced. I mean, most companies have not practiced for a ransomware attack. Most companies have not practiced for, a data breach. So they don't know what they need to do. It's like, oh my God, turn the lights off and start making decisions. What do we do with the servers? How do we get revenue back up really quick? So all of that happens the moment you have a data breach. It's like it's an explosion, and you have to start to interact with security companies, the press, the customers, getting dragged on social media, all at the exact time when you don't even know what's happening. It is truly nerve-wracking. And it's almost like your house is burning down. What do? You haven't prepared. You have to go in and grab your children and your pets and your valuables, but you never practice. It's just, you only have a few minutes to do it. So that's the human side of it. That's the emotional side. To answer your question, that's where cyber insurance really comes in. Cyber insurance provides not only finance, people think of insurance as, okay, if I have a breach or I have some issue, I'll get paid on it. But it's really more than the payment. It's all about the vendors and the resources that go along with the policy. So, usually if you had a data breach, the first call you'll make is usually to your insurance company. Probably it could be to your lawyer or maybe your IT, but eventually you're going to get that insurance company involved, and they start to deploy resources. They have a breach coach or a quarterback. That's usually a law firm. They start to handle the breach. They start to handle the recovery. They'll bring in forensic investigators, because the key is, and I think we were saying this before, is how much how much data has been exposed, which patients, which customers that we need to worry about. And then they'll bring in other vendors that have reputation management. How do we get ahead of stories that are going to be told about, this breach and damage to our reputation? Then you start to help desk, because you're going to have customers calling in, fearful of that their information, upset that their information has been compromised. Then there's credit monitoring and all of those pieces. So the insurance company really does provide not only financial help, but help with all of these vendors and specialized breach response vendors that can really minimize the damage of a breach. That's why if you don't have that, it becomes very expensive quickly. But also, you have no one organizing this. You haven't done this. You're hoping that that your law firm can help you. You're hoping that your IT firm can help you. But there's so many moving parts that you may not have access to. So, I like to advise clients that it isn't just the financial, not just that $1 million policy or $2 million policy. It's all of the resources that go along with it. Those are critical in responding to a data breach.
Art, as I think about that, it's those sort of nuanced other things that are the scary things. Like, paying off these crazy hackers a couple $100,000 to get your data back is one thing, but I think sometimes the insurmountable thing is the collateral damage.
Yep.
It's the collateral damage of customers not trusting you anymore and
Absolutely.
thinking, right? Like, you can't fix that with money.
You think about it. You have a data breach. And say an employee caused the data breach. You're trying to respond. They're crying in your office because they feel responsible. They're worried that they're going to get fired. You're like, that's the last thing I'm thinking about right now. I need to, so all of these moving parts. And you said, maybe paying the ransom. There are some groups that you are, forbidden. It's against the law to pay. You don't want to get yourself exposed into something like that. And the question is, how do you pay off someone? Okay, they want in some kind of cryptocurrency. Do you know how to pay a ransom? Can you get money? Can you get $400,000 out of your bank and go get some cryptocurrency? No one knows how to do this, or most companies don't know how to do it. So it's all of those moving pieces that, again, most people have not prepared for, and they wouldn't even know how to pay a ransom. They don't know how to protect their reputation. They don't know what to say to the press. They don't know what to say to their employees, and although it gets expensive quickly, just not being experienced in this. And business owners, if you run a business successfully, you know all the aspects of your business. But this is something you don't know, you haven't planned for, you don't know, and you need professionals. And this is the time, if you like, right after that breach or right after the discovery, you need professionals minute 1, minute 2, minute 3, because all that happens very quickly. So, some people do line those vendors up, but that's one of the benefits of having cyber insurance because of the policy.
Absolutely. We have a couple questions here. I want to get to some of these. So this one came from Joe. Joe asked, how should customers answer the MFA question on an application if they can only be 80% of 100% of the company's services, meaning out of all the software his company uses, 80% only have MFA, some of them don't.
Yeah. A lot of times those applications, there are a bunch of yes, no questions, but, do you have MFA? Yes, no. I mean, that doesn't ask you 80%, 100%, but there's also the ability to either fill out boxes of information or add supplemental information. So, I would advise being honest. If you are answering yes to having MFA, qualify it. Make sure that the insurance company knows these are the systems, and whether that is a system diagram, whether that's a report, but this is what we've implemented, and our plan is to implement more in the future, or this, whatever the circumstances are. Tell the story. Again, going back to what I said, tell the story of your cyber security and what you have implemented and what your plans are to the insurance company. They'll be able to take that information and part of their underwriting process, be able to say whether, okay, you're insurable, you're not insurable, or this is the premium to reflect the fact that, you gave us this information. A lot of companies will say, well, 80% is better than 0, so let's answer yes. But by qualifying it up front, the insurance company may come back and say, we need some more information. What's the other 20% look like? Why, what's the reason behind that? It gives you a dialogue then, as opposed to saying yes when it's not really 100%, or saying no when you have 80%. So, being honest and giving the insight allows for that conversation. And that would be my recommendation.
I think the big thing is don't assume. Don't assume that what you're right. You want to be 100% transparent, because you don't want anything to come back and bite you in the butt later.
Right. At least, I mean, if you say we have 80% and here's the 20% that we don't, and you get insurance and there's an investigation, they find that 20% is the cause. Well, we were upfront about that, and we told you, and you still insured us. So that protects you. And I think that's really important. I mean, clearly, if you say you have 10%, they're going to say, well, most likely we're not going to give you insurance, or you're going to pay a sky-high premium. But it really is important to tell the proper story. Do as you say and say as you do.
Yeah. We got one other question here. Let me put this up on the screen. What percent of carriers are providing incident response resources for the customer when an incident is reported?
Almost all of them.
Cyber insurance, I guess.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's a core part. Again, and it's twofold. One is, you have an insurance policy and it's going to pay financial, protection and help you. But two, it's going to provide those resources. But one of the keys is the insurance companies offer those because it minimizes the damage. It minimizes the impact, which then minimizes the cost to the insurance company. So think about this. If we can, put our arms around a ransomware attack and get you up and running and figure out whether, we have to notify customers or not, if we can help you with that and minimize it, then we don't have to pay as much. If the breach costs less, it costs less to the insurance company. So, one, it helps the business and it's vital. But two, it also helps the insurance company minimize the exposure that the customer faces, and then which they'll put the claim in for. So it's, insurance companies have a vested interest in helping a client minimize the impact of a data breach.
Awesome. Carlene, you want to take the next one? You're muted, I think.
Yeah, I had to actually look for my mute. Are there industries that are like more susceptible to cyber insurance than others?
Yeah. There are some industries, that's a great question, Carlene, because there are some industries that insurance carriers are very leery of. All right. So one is managed service providers, these IT companies that are providing services to lots of small businesses. If they get compromised, there's a good chance that their clients will be compromised. So insurance carriers are leery of managed service providers. Healthcare is a huge target, right? There's so much valuable data. They're one of the most breached industries. They're also one of the least protected. They spend the least on implementing cyber security. So, if you're a carrier, you're going to be very worried about healthcare. Manufacturing is another industry that's targeted a lot. Manufacturing, you think of, one, you could stop a major manufacturer. Two, there's lots of intellectual property in manufacturing that if you could steal that IP, you could, jumpstart